If you want to know why a school's child protection system fails, do not look at their policy manual. Like, look at an Olympic rowing crew.
Right, which sounds completely bizarre at first glance.
It really does. But today, we are exploring this strange, kind of counterintuitive truth about how groups of people operate under pressure. Because the fastest boats and the safest organizations are actually not built on individual superstars.
No, they really aren't. In fact, an individual superstar is usually the exact thing that sinks the ship.
Exactly. And that is exactly what we are dissecting in this deep dive. We're looking at a framework that maps the physics of elite rowing directly onto the role of a designated safeguarding lead, or a DSL.
Right, and for those who might be outside the education or social work world, a DSL is basically the person in a school or an organization who's responsible for child protection.
Yeah, and it's so crucial to understand what that actually looks like in practice, because safeguarding is rarely about, one massive dramatic rescue. It's really about this massive web of adults.
Teachers, boarding staff, nurses, coaches.
Yeah, all of them, sharing these microscopic daily observations to catch a problem before it explodes.
What's fascinating here is that when those safeguarding systems fail and, a child actually falls through the cracks, we immediately want to look for the villain.
Right, we want someone to blame.
Exactly. We look for the massive, catastrophic mistake. We just assume someone didn't care enough. But the reality of systemic failure is much more mundane and, frankly, much more terrifying.
Because it's not malicious.
No, not at all. Systems do not usually fail because of a lack of care. They fail because of a lack of rhythm. The team just fragmented. They simply stopped rowing in sync.
Okay, let's unpack this, because starting with this idea of the individual superstar, it completely shatters how we usually hire and promote people.
Oh, totally. We are so conditioned to think that way.
Right, like we think if you put the strongest, most elite athletes in a boat, you get the fastest boat. But the mechanics of rowing actually show that an individually elite athlete can slow a boat down.
Significantly. Like, think about the physics of a rowing show. You have 8 athletes driving oars into the water.
Right.
If one rower is demonstrably stronger than the rest, but their pacing is disconnected from the crew.
Like they're pulling too fast?
Yeah, maybe they're catching the water a fraction of a second early or pulling with a different stroke rate because, their ego tells them they need to carry the team.
Right, they want to be the hero.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they actually create counterforces. Their individual brilliance actively fights the momentum of the boat. Rowing violently punishes ego.
Wow. So if we translate that to, say, the hallway of a high school or the floor of a hospital, a safeguarding rhythm isn't just about everyone caring about kids. It's about how they pass the baton.
Precisely.
So what does that soloist rower look like in an organization?
Well, it is the brilliant, incredibly empathetic teacher who decides they can handle a student's distress entirely on their own.
Oh, I see.
They think, I have a great relationship with this kid. I don't need to log this in the system or loop in the counselor. I'll just manage it.
It sounds like a choir where one person decides to sing their solo brilliantly, but they sing it in a completely different key.
That's a great way to put it.
Like, it doesn't matter how beautiful their voice is in isolation. It ruins the whole song, because now the rest of the system is completely blind.
Exactly. The counselor doesn't know. The school nurse doesn't know. Safeguarding is a coordinated organizational rhythm, not an individual performance.
Right.
When staff bypass protocols because they think they know better, or when departments operate in complete isolation, the whole system just loses momentum.
But let me challenge this from a leadership perspective for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you inherit a broken school.
Okay.
Morale is terrible. Departments are totally siloed, and the communication is just a complete mess. In that scenario, wouldn't bringing in a superstar safeguarding leader like a visionary force of nature who just works 90 hours a week, wouldn't that be enough to save a fragmented team?
It's a really logical assumption, but when you look at the data on organizational turnarounds, that approach is almost universally doomed.
Wait, really?
Yeah. One strong safeguarding leader cannot fully compensate for a fragmented team culture.
Even if they're working around the clock?
Even then, if you drop a superstar into a boat where the other 7 people are rowing at a time, the boat doesn't suddenly go straight.
Sure.
The superstar just burns themselves out trying to muscle the boat forward while absorbing all the counterforce. The safest systems are actually the least ego-centered.
So they have to get everyone else in time first.
Exactly. Leadership in this context isn't about being the strongest puller. It is about establishing a shared cadence.
That shifts the entire paradigm. I mean, it means we have to stop looking for heroes and start looking for alignment.
Right.
So we've established that the loud, ego-driven superstar actually breaks the boat. But what terrifies me more isn't the loud mistakes, it's the quiet ones.
The invisible ones, yeah.
Exactly, the ones nobody notices until it is far too late. Like, if ego causes an obvious splash, what causes a team of perfectly capable professionals to just, quietly drift apart?
Well, in elite rowing, the most dangerous thing isn't actually a flipped boat. It is a tiny timing error.
Really? Just a tiny error.
Yeah, if the crew synchronization is off by just a fraction of a second, it creates a disproportionate amount of what they call drag.
Okay.
The boat doesn't stop. It just feels a little heavier. It loses speed gradually, quietly, and systemically.
So what is the equivalent of that drag in an organization?
It is the friction of daily handoffs. It's delayed communication, the late recording of an incident, a missed escalation.
It's just this tiny little administrative things.
Right. Let's look at a concrete scenario. Imagine a math teacher notices a student is unusually irritable on a Tuesday, but decides to wait until Friday to log it.
Okay.
On Wednesday, the soccer coach notices the same student looks exhausted, but, forgets to send an email. On Thursday, the school nurse treats that student for a tension headache.
Right, and individually, each of those adults just thinks, oh, the kid is having a rough day.
Exactly. But systemically, that is a child in crisis. If the organizational rhythm is tight, if there is zero drag, those 3 minor observations are logged instantly.
So the system catches it immediately.
Why? The designated safeguarding lead sees the pattern emerging by Wednesday afternoon and intervenes. But because of the drag, those tiny delays, the pattern remains invisible.
That is terrifying.
It is. Major safeguarding failures, the tragedies that end up on the evening news, they are rarely built from one massive misstep. They are built from the accumulation of repeated, small coordination failures. It's death by 1,000 tiny delays.
So let's get into the psychology of why those delays happen in the first place.
Yeah.
If I'm looking at a team and they are consistently logging things late or missing these seemingly simple emails, is it just laziness?
That is the assumption most bad managers make.
Right, they just assume people are bad at their jobs.
Exactly. But the reality points to something entirely structural. Fatigue.
Fatigue.
Yeah. Exhausted crews lose their timing. In a boat, when a rower's muscles are flooded with lactic acid, their peripheral vision literally narrows.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they stop sensing the movements of the person in front of them. They literally drift apart rhythmically. And staff fatigue does the exact same thing to safeguarding attentiveness.
This is such a critical pivot because we usually treat burnout as an HR issue, right?
Absolutely.
Like we give staff a wellness day or a free coffee in the break room and tell them to practice self-care. But you are saying fatigue is actually a structural flaw in the organization's safety net.
It is a massive safeguarding vulnerability. Tired teams communicate less clearly, and crucially, they notice less effectively.
They get that tunnel vision.
Exactly. When an educator is exhausted, their cognitive bandwidth shrinks. They might still teach the math lesson perfectly, but they no longer have the surplus energy required to notice the subtle shift in a student's demeanor. They lose their peripheral vision.
Which means the application here isn't just telling people to get a better night's sleep. If you are a leader, you have to look at the workload you are dumping on your staff.
Precisely.
Like if you are asking teachers to run 3 extracurricular clubs, grade papers until midnight, and navigate complex behavioral needs, you cannot be surprised when they drop the ball on a safeguarding note. You engineered that failure.
You did. Building sustainable staffing structures, providing reflective supervision, and creating emotional support systems, these aren't just perks. They are the prerequisites for maintaining the timing of the boat.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. If fatigue and these tiny, quiet timing errors are constantly threatening to slow the boat down, how do you fight it?
Communication.
Yeah.
Relentless communication.
Right. How do you catch the drag before it becomes a disaster? Because what we see in the rowing world is that they combat this through relentless, almost telepathic communication.
Yes. Elite crews communicate constantly, but often incredibly subtly. They feel the shifts in the boat's balance.
So how does that translate to an office or a school?
In the workplace,
Yeah.
this translates to psychological safety and shared language. A strong safeguarding culture requires ongoing relational awareness.
Right.
Teams that protect students, well, trust each other deeply. They know that if they raise a concern, the rest of the crew will respond consistently. without judgment or defensiveness.
But let me play devil's advocate for a second. Let's say I am leading a department. We have our weekly meeting. I open the floor for concerns, and everyone is completely quiet.
Okay.
No one brings up a single issue. As a leader, my first instinct is to think, fantastic, the boat is gliding smoothly, everyone is happy, no problems to report. Why shouldn't I take that silence as a win?
This raises an important question, and honestly, it is a trap that ensnares leaders constantly. In complex human systems, silence is rarely neutral.
Really?
Yeah. If your team is entirely quiet, it almost never means perfection. It usually means friction.
Wait, silence is friction. How does that work?
Think about the underlying mechanism of bringing a problem forward. Silence often signals an unspoken disagreement about thresholds.
What do you mean by thresholds?
For example, one teacher might think a student's disruptive behavior is a red flag requiring intervention, but they know another teacher views it as just typical teenage acting out.
Ah, I see.
So to avoid the interpersonal conflict of debating that threshold, they just stay quiet.
That makes so much sense. Or, going back to the fatigue issue we just talked about, think about the sheer cognitive load of reporting.
Exactly.
Imagine a teacher sees a yellow flag behavior. Not a glaring emergency, but a mild concern. They know that officially logging this means navigating some clunky software system.
Oh, the software is always clunky.
Always. And it might trigger an automatic alert that requires a mandatory 4 p.m. meeting with defensive parents and an impatient principal. And they have been teaching since 7 in the morning.
Exactly. The easiest way to conserve energy is to stay quiet. They rationalize it to themselves, like, I'm probably overthinking it, I'll just keep an eye on it. That isn't malice. It is a self-preservation mechanism caused by a system that makes communication just way too expensive. Furthermore, silence can signal emotional withdrawal. When staff are overwhelmed by secondary trauma, or when they feel their past reports when ignored by leadership, they pull back emotionally. They just punch the clock.
So as a diagnostic tool, if you are looking at your team and hearing crickets, you shouldn't be celebrating. You should be investigating.
Absolutely.
You have to assume the rhythm has broken somewhere beneath the surface. Okay, as illuminating as this rowing framework is, we do have to examine where the metaphor hits a wall. Because at the end of the day, a middle school is not an Olympic training facility.
It absolutely is not.
Yeah.
And any leader who tries to copy-paste an Olympic athletic mindset directly into a caregiving environment is going to create a deeply toxic culture.
Right.
There is a fundamental difference in the ultimate goal here.
Because if an Olympic rower have a bad season or injures their shoulder and can't pull their weight, the coach just cuts them from the team.
Yeah, they're gone.
The system ejects the weak link to preserve the speed of the boat.
Exactly. But in education or social work, students are not performance outcomes. If a student is struggling, acting out, or falling behind, you do not eject them to make the school look better.
Right, you do the opposite.
The system has to wrap around them tighter. The response is the exact opposite of elite sports. Furthermore, human care just cannot be reduced to mechanical coordination alone.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, an Olympic coach is coordinating physical synchronization. They want 8 bodies acting like a machine. But a DSL is coordinating emotional, procedural, and relational alignment.
You're dealing with messy, unpredictable human beings.
Exactly. So what does this all mean? For the person listening right now, it seems to me that it's a call to entirely reevaluate how we view our daily interactions at work.
Definitely.
Like, we need the discipline and the collective rhythm of the athlete, but we have to keep the heart and the human-centered focus of the educator. It is not about being the loudest voice in the room or the hero who works the longest hours.
No, the overarching lesson here is that progress and safety depend entirely on shared rhythm. A true leader understands that the boat begins to slow down long before the crew realizes they have lost the beat.
It's that invisible drag.
Yes. Safeguarding demands an obsessive awareness of that drag. Teams succeed not through isolated excellence, and certainly not through heroic individuals rowing harder alone until their oars snap.
Right.
They succeed by moving together consistently, communicating honestly, even when it is incredibly uncomfortable, and holding that shared rhythm when the fatigue and complexity are dialing up.
Because ultimately, the people you serve, whether they are students, patients, or clients, are safest when the adults responsible for them are truly rowing together, not simply rowing beside each other.
Rowing together, not simply rowing beside each other. That is such a profound distinction.
It really is. So, if you are listening to this right now, take a hard look at your own teams today. Look at the people you share an office with or the departments you collaborate with. Are you genuinely moving in sync, anticipating each other's needs, and catching the small delays?
Or are you just occupying the same boat, rowing at your own disconnected pace and wondering why the journey feels so endlessly exhausting?
Exactly. And we want to leave you with a direct challenge to carry forward into your week.
Where in your own system, whether it is your business, your community group, or your family, has rhythm, communication, or trust quietly started drifting apart? And what structural changes would it take to help the whole crew move together coherently again?
Something to mull over as you navigate your own waters this week. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep your timing true, look out for the quiet drift, and we will catch you on the next one.